Hi, welcome. I'm JoAnn Sanchez. I'm Program Director of the Western Herbalism program at the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts that we call SWIHA. This morning I've come to share with you a lesson about a very special desert medicinal plant. I am here in the garden where the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts Western Herbalism students do their cultivation exercises. We grow a wonderful medicine garden here, one of the largest in Arizona. So I have a wonderful desert medicinal plant to share with you. Its common name is Yerba Mansa, also sometimes called Yerba del Manzo or Yerba Manzo. And the English translation of that is tame herb. And that's kind of a nice way to begin this. This is a plant that is wild in the Arizona area, along the Colorado River, in Nevada, in both Sonora and Chihuahua and Mexico, in California, along the Rio Grande in New Mexico. So this is a plant that is truly native to the Southwest. In addition to being native, it is also a plant that takes to cultivation well. There are two really good reasons to cultivate this plant. The first is that it is somewhat at risk in its native habitats. So we don't want to pick a plant that is not hardy in its presentation right now. So cultivating it takes the strain off of the harvest in the wild. The second reason is this plant's, another common name for Yerba Mansa, is swamp root. And so that tells you a lot. This plant loves to be in oozy glurches, is what Michael Moore called it. So you can just get a picture in your mind from those two descriptions. And as such, it will pick up toxicity from the soil. So if we're not really clear about where this plant is growing, then we best be mindful before we pick it in the wild. So for those two good reasons, we cultivate it here in the garden, and it takes very well to cultivation. If you ever hear this plant be calling lizard tail, you'll know that it is indeed also another name for Yerba Mansa. The most important name, though, is Anemopsis californica, which is its Latin binomial name, which helps us to be sure that we're talking about this plant and no other. As you can see, this plant is a low-growing plant. Rarely does it reach more than a foot tall. It is a perennial plant, and it is herbaceous throughout its whole life cycle, meaning that it never is woody. It is a non-woody herbaceous plant, a true herb. Yerba Mansa grows itself by cloning, and it is always present in stands. So this plant in the Swiraceae family has very unique flower. It grows, the flower petals grow on bracts, and it is these bracts where the seeds will grow. So the bracts are where the seeds grow. The white petals that form a circle are not really petals. Those tiny little white presentations up on that rising spike are where the petals really are. So it's kind of like a flower in disguise in a way. All parts of this plant are strongly aromatic. The leaves, fresh or dry, and especially the fleshy roots. The aromatic oils smell somewhere between camphor and eucalyptus. One of the important things to know about how Yerba Mansa serves the area that it grows in is that once it becomes established, it will change alkaline, which is pretty much what we have for soils here in the Southwest desert. Yerba Mansa will change the alkaline soils so that there is more opportunity to aerate the soil and to enhance the quality of the soil and the microbial activity as well as the general ecology of the soil. So very important thing to know about medicine plants is when to harvest and how to harvest. So the thing that we know about the Yerba Mansa, here is a wonderful presentation of seeing those nice fleshy roots. And it grows by cloning along these runners. And here is a joint where it will send more roots. So with this strategy of cloning through sending out runners that root themselves, we have a wonderful opportunity to see the Yerba Mansa, as I said earlier, in colonies. And so we can pick the roots from the ground. Very easily they come and are willingly available to us with a good shovel. And then we can longitudinally cut them and let them wilt for a little bit so that we can prevent molding, and then we can continue the drying process. That would give us some Yerba Mansa roots for storage, or we can freshly harvest, wash, and cut and make a fresh medicine. Some of the medicines that we make from the Yerba Mansa are leaf medicines. We can make a tea which is mildly aromatic, and that could be a wash, for instance. We can wash wounds with it. It is both antibacterial and antimicrobial and antifungal also. Or we can take a bath in it. There are some traditional uses for it to help with pain of muscles and joints. So those would be water extracts of the leaf, mildly aromatic. The roots are much more strong in those aromatic principles. One of the volatile oils that Yerba Mansa roots contains is thymol. So we know thymol from the plant thyme. And so we also note that we have a wonderful antimicrobial combination of aromatic oils in this plant. And fresh or dry, we often make tinctures from them. So to make a tincture, of course, you would take the alcohol and water mixture that is appropriate. Here it would be higher alcohol, lower water, and cut the roots in small pieces and put them in a measured amounts of equivocals between the alcohol and water, between the amount of roots you have, and let it sit for about a lunar cycle. Is always a nice time to set a tincture out for, from one phase of the moon to the next phase of the moon. And then that is called an extract, an herbal extract, that can be used in dropperful quantities, 2 or 3 dropperfuls at a time, up to 3 to 5 times a day, depending on whether or not a person has. And here's the key application for this plant. It's used for the condition that we call boggy tissue that will not heal. So that boggy tissue that doesn't heal could be in the sinuses, it could be in the throat, it could be in the gums, it could be in the intestines. So all of these places, if you've had an infection that is staying and not healing because of the moisture, this plant has an affinity to help healing that. So when infections take too long and there's problems with the gums or the throat or the sinuses or even in the stomach, then all of these would be good applications for Yerba Mansa. Another good way to use Yerba Mansa is to take the roots and cut them and dry them completely and make a powder, or what you would call a dust. And it works very nicely on rashes, particularly diaper rash, for instance. One more use for this Yerba Mansa, and you could do this with the leaves, dried or fresh, or with the tincture of the Yerba Mansa. Either way, you could make a sitz bath. Actually, you could combine the roots and the leaves and make a nice warm, concentrated tea that you put in a small container that you can sit in, a sitz bath. And it would be very useful for things like cysts and hemorrhoids and like that. So this is a plant where all of the plant is used primarily, except the stem. It has many applications promoting healing around tissue that's become too moistened, and that moisture is inhibiting the healing process. One of the things that I like to share about using herbs is what herbs can we use it with, because oftentimes we don't use one plant at a time. In this plant we find evidence of its use in America as early as 1820s, or maybe as late as the 1820s, and probably was used in general medicine all along. Then in the medicine books we start to see it drop out for a while around the 1820s. The physicians who used this were called eclectics. We also find evidence of the homeopathic physicians using this plant during that time. Then it lost favor, and now again we are reaping the benefits of this wonderful desert plant. So, as I said, I like to mention the plants that this plant or any one plant can be used with and how they might have an affinity with those other plants. With physiomedicalist practitioners, we call this pairing. So 2 herbs at a time, and how do they uniquely combine together to make a good application. So one interesting pair can be echinacea, which most people know, and Yerba Mansa, as tinctures combined together in equal parts. And this would be very useful if there was any kind of intestinal infection, for instance. Another plant of the Southwest that can combine very well with Yerba Mansa is grindelia, or gumweed. And grindelia and Yerba Mansa together will address the lungs. If we add manzanita, Arctostaphylos, to the Yerba Mansa, the Anamopsis, we have a wonderful remedy for the urinary tract. 2 other herbs, either one would pair nicely with Yerba Mansa to help soothe the tissue once you've come a long way with the healing process. So Yerba Mansa with malvas, any of the malvas, marshmallow, the local globe mallow, or even hollyhock, a close relative. The leaves and the roots of these plants are very moistening in terms of healing. So once you've addressed the infection or the approach that you're using, you can add one of these, hollyhock or malva or marshmallow, to the Yerba Mansa to really finish up the healing process and leave none of that unfinished. I would like to mention a North American plant that this plant can be a substitute or an analog for, and that is Goldenseal. So Goldenseal is neither botanically nor chemically related to Yerba Mansa, but if you already know how to use Goldenseal, then you can make a very suitable substitute for the endangered Goldenseal with the Yerba Mansa for boggy tissue that cannot heal or congested mucus passages, for instance. I would like to give you a little recipe for a nasal spray using Yerba Mansa. The thing to do to make this nasal spray is to make a water percolation. So that's where you would put plant material and water above it and let the water pass through the plant material. But if you can't do a percolation, you can do a tea. You don't need much, about 1 ounce by volume of roots to about 10 ounces of water. Let it sit for about an hour. You don't even need to heat it up. The aromatics will come into the water. Then strain the plant material and add about 20% glycerin and 10% alcohol. So this is not rubbing alcohol, this is alcohol that you could ingest, and you combine the water mixture with 20% more glycerin and 10% alcohol, shake it up, and you have a wonderful nasal spray if you put it in a spray bottle. This nasal spray could be used for hay fever or allergies or the residual effects of having a head cold, if you will. So there's some information for you about a wonderful plant, Yerba Mansa. Easy to grow, easy to dig, is prolific in its capacity to be a healthy garden plant, has beautiful showy flowers, is here all year long. In the fall it will start to turn red. That's showing you that it's a really good time to pick the roots. Not that there's anything wrong with your Yerba Mansa. It's a plant that has an affinity to the Southwest, which is where I am, but I think that many apothecaries now also sell Yerba Mansa because it has come back to its claim of fame in the American marketplace. I hope you've enjoyed these few moments learning about Yerba Mansa. This is a little bit of an orientation of how you might be learning about herbs, learning about them live, learning about how to use them, how to pick them, how to grow them, what to use them for, how to prepare them into medicines. This is what herbalists do. This is what the herbalists at the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts learn how to do every day. Thank you.